Okay guys, welcome back. So we're going to continue today with our conversation about inflammation in the body, inflammatory foods, and what do we do about it. I want to pick up with we're talking about our immune system. So last week we talked a lot about the inflammatory response and how it affects joint pain and some general health conditions. This week I want to dive in a little bit deeper with the immune system response. So our immune system is designed to fight off invaders. If a bacteria comes into the body, a virus comes into the body, a toxin comes into the body has a ramped up system that responds to that, to take out that threat before it can make us sick or do harm to the body. Our immune system is made up of the skin, the intestinal lining. Those are the two major components of the immune system. So let's talk a little bit about our adaptive immune system. This includes B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes. So this is where the inflammatory response related to foods come in. And I'm going to be referring to my notes because some of this gets a little complicated. And this is how inflammation is caused. So the inflammatory response is something that should be turned on if a virus is introduced. The body fights it off, it's gone, that system is turned off. What's happening with us is there's so much inflammation caused from the foods we're taking in that it's become chronic. There is no turning off of the system. It's constantly on. The body is constantly perceiving a threat, so there's this higher level of inflammation throughout the body. Now, that's going to result in some pretty serious things that you yourself may have experienced. I know I have. First of all, you get brain fog. You can have bloating, fatigue, gas. And in my situation, and perhaps yours if you're having trouble, the ability to lose weight while you're in this inflammatory situation is almost impossible. So a true allergy activates the IgE system, and that's where you get into things like anaphylaxis. So we're talking about two entirely different systems when we talk about this inflammatory response. So food sensitivities are what causes this chronic inflammation. So let's look at it this way. Each food comes with a name tag. So when you eat cabbage, it goes down into your intestines and it's like, oh yeah, that's cabbage. We're going to send this on down to be digested and get the vitamins out that we need from the cabbage. But if you're eating cabbage that was sprayed, let's say with some kind of pesticide to keep worms from getting in the cabbage, just for instance, the body's like confused by that. I think that's cabbage, but what is this other substance we're picking up on? And then that's when it creates that inflammatory response. And if you're taking in a lot of different foods with this kind of, where the body's confused by that, this inflammation is just an ongoing issue. I want to talk to you a little bit. We've talked a ton about what foods cause this, but I wanted to put them up here again to make sure we're clear. There's a few things I added in with my research this week. So, processed foods. If you read a label and you can't pronounce half of the ingredients on it, the body likely can't recognize that as well. That's just a key thing. Is it hard to give up convenience of processed food? Absolutely. But we have to understand that when we eat, our diet is primarily comprised of these processed foods. Our body doesn't know what to do. It's not like it's going, oh yeah, that's cabbage. It doesn't know what it is. Food sensitivities, we've talked a ton about that. So this is a key one, sugar, and we're going to focus in a lot on that a little bit this week and a lot next week. In my lecture this week, Sarah Wilson, she is just a well-known, actually she was a reporter who was having some health issues and decided to give up sugar, and now she's got this she was on there talking about it. I think as Americans, we have a skewed concept of how much sugar we should actually be consuming. So I want you this week to look at the foods that you're eating, because a lot of our highly processed foods contain a ton of sugar. The average person should only be consuming 6 to 9 teaspoons of sugar a day. And we're going to delve into all of those facts next week, and I'm going to tell you a lot more about how much we're actually consuming and how that's having such a detriment on our health. But it's just too much. It's just way too much for our system. So that's going to be our deep dive for next week. And then also artificial trans fats. This is something that the body doesn't recognize as well. And that's common in a lot of our processed foods, but also the oils that we are using to cook with are often these artificial trans fats that the body can't recognize. The artificial trans fats, they're rancid. I don't know about you, but that word just, I think, gross. It sounds like they're spoiled, and I guess they kind of are. So these fats include vegetable oils, which are so commonly used today in our population. We use vegetable oils and corn oils, and all of these oils are rancid. They are just like a toxin being taken into the body when you're using them for cooking. I don't know about you, but that was pretty eye-opening for me. I grew up with that kind of stuff. You heart healthy and all that. It doesn't mean anything when you're talking about these vegetable oils and the way that they are processed out and they become artificial trans fats. The body will not recognize that. So here's the thing. I want to go back to the week, I think it was week 2, we talked about the elimination diet. That's the only way for you to tell what is the culprit for you. I also want to talk a little bit about something that's going to be a little controversial. So here I go. I used to think that organic foods were maybe a waste of money. I'm not going to lie. I thought that's just a way for them to put a name on something and charge me more money for it. Until I really started doing this research about cabbage and how the body doesn't recognize cabbage if it's treated with all these chemicals. A true organic food has to be grown without all of that. And it's possible. We grow our own garden without all of that. But there is more of an investment in that. But you have to make a decision whether it's worth it to you to reduce this inflammation and help your body out with, hey, that's cabbage. I'm going to send that on down the line to get processed. I'm going to digest it, take out what I need, get rid of what I don't. That's what the body was designed to do. So another thing that is key and crucial to think about is the meat industry. The meat industry pumps animals full of antibiotics, steroids, all kinds of chemicals to keep them alive so that they can make it to slaughter, to be fed to Americans or whoever. Those are also things the body does not recognize. And a lot of that, I'm going to tell you, gets stored in the fat of the animal. So if you can't afford organic meats, and they are expensive, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like they're not, then there's some things you can do, like avoiding eating the fat, that can really help. But we don't think a lot about where the food comes from that we go and buy at the grocery store, but it is so crucial if you're wanting true health to start thinking along those lines. Just a tip here for vegetables, especially if you can't afford to buy all organic, or even availability is an issue. That's a problem in our area because we live in a rural community. Then I want you to look at the Environmental Working Group's list. They have a list that they publish every year from the testing that they do on produce. And they'll tell you which items have the biggest concentration. They call it the dirty dozen. They give you the 12 items that have the greatest concentration of pesticides found from their testing. And that gives you a good starting point. If you're going to eat these foods, then make sure you're investing your dollar in organic for those. So we'll put a link to that in the notes down below so that you can kind of go look at that and get that information. So another thing to really think about this week is avoiding and reducing your sugar. It's just something that as Americans we've become kind of numb to. We don't even recognize how much we actually take in. And we're going to really deep dive into that next week. It's something that I'm dealing with right now with type 2 diabetes. And it's something we have to be realistic about. We can't ignore this problem. It is a huge problem across the country, and it's sabotaging our health. So stay tuned. Next week we'll be talking about sugar addiction and why it's a problem. I hope you're enjoying these educational videos because I love putting them out for you. It's so fun to learn and be able to share that knowledge to maybe help someone else. So if you enjoyed this video, it would really help me if you would hit that like button and subscribe to my channel, and stay tuned for what's coming. See you next time.